The ancient hall, silent for 1,000 years, suddenly trembled. A crack tore through space itself, and from the darkness emerged a massive great blade suspended in midair. No one held it. No spiritual force controlled it. Yet the blade trembled softly as if it were breathing. Luke Thenfang had only just drawn his sword when the blade came crashing down. An explosive boom thundered. His body was hurled straight through the stone wall of the hall, dust billowing and swallowing everything in its wake. Hoa Lin Ni stood frozen. She could feel it clearly. That thing was not merely a weapon. It was watching them. No eyes. No mouth. Yet its killing intent radiated unmistakably like a living creature. Diapan slowly lifted his head, his gaze darkening. "This isn't right," he murmured. "This isn't an ordinary mystical weapon." The blade spun once in midair, releasing a bone-grating scrape of metal. The air solidified. Spiritual pressure bore down, cracking the ground beneath them. A blade had awakened, and it had no intention of letting anyone leave alive. The stone dust had not yet settled when the pressure from the soul blade engulfed the entire hall. Cracks spread across the floor like a web, proof that the earlier strike had not merely been an attack, it had been a warning. From the distant rubble, Luke Thenfang coughed up a mouthful of blood and forced himself to his feet. That single slash had been enough to kill any martial sovereign, but what sent a chill down his spine wasn't the sheer power. It was the will within the strike. There was blade intent, he muttered. Diapan stepped forward, his eyes never leaving the great blade suspended in the air. The ancient engravings along its surface glowed faintly like veins pulsing with blood. "This blade was forged from the corpse of an ancient beast," Diapan said in a low voice. "After its master died here, it was left behind, absorbing spiritual energy and resentment for 1,000 years. Hoa Lin He felt her heart jolt. "You're saying it developed consciousness on its own?" Diapan gave a slight nod. "It's not just a ninth-grade mystical weapon. It's a being, half weapon, half soul." At that moment, the sound of cracking stone echoed from behind the hall. A wall collapsed, revealing a fossilized garden overgrown with moss. At its center stood a rock formation, sealed beneath layers of ancient restraints. The soul blade suddenly shifted direction. It was guarding something behind it. The gaze of the soul blade, if it could even be called a gaze, seemed locked onto the rock formation at the center of the fossilized garden. The spiritual pressure around it surged, rolling outward in layered waves, sealing the three of them away from the central grounds. Diapan understood clearly. If they wanted to reach the secret beneath those ancient restraints, they would have to get past the blade. "We can't retreat now," he said quietly, but loud enough for Luke Thenfang and Hoa Lin Ni to hear. "The more fiercely it guards it, the more it proves there's something valuable beneath." Luke Thenfang wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, his eyes sharpening with resolve. "Then we fight." Sword Chi erupted. Flames spiraled into a blazing vortex around Hoa Lin He. The two martial emperors struck at the same time, attacking from opposite sides, forcing the soul blade away from its position in front of the rock formation. The clash of metal thundered through the grand hall. Blade arcs tore through the air as fire and sword light intertwined into a storm of energy. Yet even under siege, the soul blade showed no sign of disorder. It countered with precision, sharp, calculated, and cold as a seasoned warrior. Diapan did not join the battle immediately. Instead, he retreated to the edge of the garden, his eyes studying every fluctuation in the restraints, sealing the rock formation. If brute strength wasn't enough, then he would use his mind. Their journey was no longer about exploring an ancient ruin. It was about stepping into the heart of a secret that had slumbered for 1,000 years. The battle dragged on until the very space around the garden began to warp. Luke Thenfang's sword light had slowed, and Hoa Lin He's flames no longer roared as fiercely as before. But the soul blade was different. With every collision, its body shone more violently, as if layer after layer of sealed power were awakening. Careful Diapan had barely finished speaking when the sky above the great hall suddenly darkened. The soul blade shot upward, its body trembling with a heavy pulse. A massive phantom emerged behind it, the silhouette of an ancient war god gripping a blade, his aura overwhelming the heavens. Blade intent. Not merely a strike, but the lingering martial will of its former master. The blade fell. In that instant, the entire garden seemed dragged into a world made of nothing but blade energy. The ground split apart, and the central rock formation shattered under the terrifying aftershock. Then, water burst forth. From the cracked remains of the rock formation, a clear spring erupted, spilling across the stone floor. Wherever the water flowed, moss regenerated, withered grass stirred back to life. Vital energy surged so thick it was suffocating. Diapan froze, his heart pounding. The primordial life spring. If the soul blade had truly developed sentience, then its origin was very likely this very stream. The battle was no longer simply about survival. It had become a struggle over a secret capable of rewriting the laws of life itself. The primordial life spring spread throughout the garden, vitality surging like a rising tide. But what sent a chill through Diapan was the sight before him. The soul blade did not retreat. It plunged straight into the stream. The instant the blade touched the water, its entire body erupted in radiant light. The ancient engravings along its surface blazed brilliantly, and its spiritual pressure doubled. The air thickened, heavy and viscous, making even breathing difficult. This is bad. Hoalin Ni staggered back a step, her face pale. It's absorbing the life force. Luke Thanfang gritted his teeth and unleashed a full-powered strike. But the sword chi shattered like glass the moment it struck the blade's aura. The soul blade was no longer merely a sentient weapon. It was evolving. Diephan could feel it clearly. If it were allowed to continue absorbing the primordial life spring, they would have no chance left. Retreat, Luke Thanfang roared. If we stay, we die. But Diephan did not move. His eyes were locked onto the flowing water beneath the blade. To leave meant abandoning a once-in-a-thousand-year opportunity. To stay might cost them their lives. The hesitation lasted only a heartbeat. And in that very instant the soul blade fully broke its final seal. A sweeping arc of blade energy slashed outward, severing every path of escape. The blade's arc swept across the garden, tearing apart the land that had just been reborn. Fresh sprouts were reduced to ash in an instant. Luke Thanfang and Hoalin Ni were forced back to the very edge of the great hall, their blood and chi churning violently within them. The soul blade slowly rose from the surface of the spring. Its entire body now blazed like a metallic sun. Behind it, the phantom of the ancient war god solidified further, cold eyes gazing downward as if passing judgment. We can't win. Hoalin Ni whispered, her voice nearly swallowed by the crushing spiritual pressure. Luke Thanfang tightened his grip on his sword and looked toward Diephan. Let's go. As long as we live, there'll be another chance. But Diephan remained standing in the center of the garden where the primordial life springs surged. Blade winds whipped his robes violently, yet his gaze was eerily calm. The blade fell. Space itself fractured. With a grim snarl, Luke Thanfang tore through the void, dragging Hoalin Ni out of the great hall at the final possible instant. The garden was swallowed in blinding white light. When the aftershock finally faded, only Diephan remained standing alone within a chaotic sea of blade energy and rampant life force. No allies. No escape. Before him hovered the fully awakened soul blade. In that moment, everything seemed lost. Either he would die, or he would create a miracle no one would dare believe. Amid the raging sea of blade energy, Diephan slowly closed his eyes. At the very moment when everything seemed to be collapsing, his expression became strangely serene. You are powerful. But you are still only a blade. The soul blade roared. The war god phantom behind it raised its weapon high, preparing to strike again. The surrounding space was locked tight by ancient martial will. But at that exact moment, a deep resonant bell tolled. The sound waves rippled outward, shaking layer upon layer of blade energy. In the sky above, a massive golden bell manifested, rotating slowly as radiant light blanketed the entire garden. The soul blade faltered. Before it could react, the ground beneath Diephan split apart. A colossal black stele surged upward like a heavenly pillar, emanating an ancient aura so profound that even the war god phantom trembled. World-sealing divine mark. Suppress. Diephan swept his hand forward. 3 ice-blue swords materialized, spinning into formation and forming a sword array that sealed all 4 directions. Blade energy was shredded apart. Spiritual pressure was crushed layer by layer. The soul blade writhed, spinning wildly in midair, yet it could not break free from the tightening barrier. The world-sealing divine mark descended from above. A deep explosion echoed. The metallic radiance went dark. The soul blade, a sentient being forged over 1,000 years, was completely suppressed. Amid the flowing waters of the primordial life spring, Diephan opened his eyes. The board had just turned. The world-sealing divine mark hovered silently in the air, its ancient radiance still pressing down upon the soul blade, sealed beneath it. The blade energy gradually dissipated, and the garden slowly returned to stillness. Only the gentle murmur of the primordial life spring remained flowing through a space that had just endured utter devastation. Diephan stepped into the stream. Pure vitality coursed through his meridians, each cell in his body seeming to renew itself. But he knew the most valuable thing here was not merely the spring. It was the secret behind it. He lifted his gaze toward the distant horizon, his eyes darkening. Somewhere else on the continent, Moon Sun City had been leveled overnight. A martial emperor skilled in divination was using a mystic mirror to trace the threads of heavenly fate. And within countless chaotic visions, Diephan's silhouette flickered briefly before vanishing. A man whose destiny could not be read. The primordial life spring was only the beginning. The soul blade had been suppressed. But was it truly subdued? And who was the one that annihilated an entire city? The story is far from over. This was merely the overture to a grand upheaval destined to shake heaven and earth. If you'd like to follow Diephan's journey further, comment 1, and I'll continue the next chapter where the true secret of the primordial life spring will finally be revealed.